This is part number 3. We'll probably have part 4 and end it there. But we have several illustrations, and we're not hurrying through these. It takes us time to develop them. Oh, that's something else. Pastor Hamoki, Evangelist Lee Hamoki, told me of a printing company that is willing to give somebody a color printer. It's a laser printer. And the ink and the printer are free as far as the black ink, but you have to buy the colored ink. The colored ink is real expensive. You also have to promise to do 1,500 copies of color. This is for nonprofit organizations, 1,500 copies a month. You buy the paper and the ink and so forth. We're going to check into that because several have asked for our illustrations, and it would be easy. For example, I print them off here, and sometimes I do the notes, but sometimes I just don't have an opportunity. I was gone Monday and Tuesday, and I just barely got these done for our study and all the research for it. And so maybe we'll look into that, because you can make notes off to the side of the PowerPoint things and also the Astound things that I have. We run them off of 3 slides to a page. That's one of the reasons we haven't done it as yet, but we're going to look into it, and hopefully this will be helpful to you, because many of you try to get the drawings down, and I'm grateful for that. But you can't hear, write the notes, and draw the drawings at the same time. All right. We've been covering what to me is a real important subject. Patty Quall said that many have said to her, aren't we happy now? We've got us a Christian nation. The fact of the matter is, we do not have a Christian nation. It was never meant to be a Christian nation. But even if we did, it would not be in the will of God. And that's what we're talking about. The will of God for the dispensation of grace is to have free nations, not nations with a state religion, even though it might be Christianity. Now, if we had a state religion and it was even a grace, and you passed laws that everybody that wanted to be a citizen of America must be a grace believer, you would coerce volition. They would go through the motions and say, oh yeah, well, I believe in grace, just simply to get American citizenship. And it would be an arm twisting or some sort of gimmick to get them to admit grace just for the privilege of being an American citizen. And that's not what God wants for this dispensation. Anything that smacks of volitional manipulation is wrong. Okay, and it sort of sounded like I had something to drink there, but I really haven't had anything but water and coffee. So we drew this particular slide here to show we're dispensationalists here. And there is both a vertical and a horizontal relationship that we need to keep in mind. The vertical is variable. God says different things about Christ that man is to respond to and believe throughout history. The constant is that he wants volition to be exercised. But there are some restrictions to this. You cannot go beyond what God has revealed for that time. For example, we can't go beyond grace, as it's been revealed to Paul, and look to law for our salvation. Nor could a law believer look forward to the grace revelation, because he didn't even know there was going to be such a thing. And so you are, as it were, stuck to respond to the revelation that God has given for your time in history. And people are saved by exercising their volition and faith, but they're saved by believing different things in history about Christ. All right. Now, the importance of this that I stressed this morning is that the righteousness of God is revealed in that revelation. And so, therefore, man must look back to that revelation to be saved. But once he looks back in faith, there is the reciprocity. The righteousness of God is both revealed in that revelation and received by believing that revelation. So that if a man goes to the Bible and says, well, this is what it says in the Bible, I'm going to just believe it. If it is not for his dispensation, God does not impute or impart his righteousness to that person. That's how critical this is. Your soul salvation is based on believing what God has revealed for the time. So we ask the question, which gospel is for today? Because there is only one. Is it Paul's gospel, as he claims, or is it another gospel? Now, we of course believe that the only one that is valid for this time is Paul's gospel. All others do not save. And so we went through and we looked at the names of Paul's gospel. There are some similarities. There are some connections to the past. But there are also some great, great differences. This is the gospel of our Gentile salvation. Now, that brings us then to Galatians chapter 1. And we have to realize that even though the politician names the name of God, for example, we had Lieberman on the Democratic ticket, and Lieberman was a Jew, and he has a strong Jewish faith. Even though he mentions God and so forth, and though he got elected, and though he would have influenced people and for that particular faith, that's still not the faith that saves. And even the president that we have in there, naming the name of Christ. Now, some have said that he is saved. Perhaps he is. But the church that he goes to does not preach a straight gospel message. It combines works. And just as soon as you combine the least amount of works or human effort or human merit for salvation, it negates grace totally. We've looked at that before, Romans 11:6. It's either all grace or all works, and works that don't save. But you can't combine the two. Otherwise, you change their texture, characteristics, and effectiveness. But note what he says, verse number 7 here. Well, let's now go back to verse 6. Excuse me, I wanted verse 6. I marvel that ye are so soon removed from him that called you to the grace of Christ unto another gospel. Now, the word removed there in the Greek is metatithemi, and it means to change places or change positions. You see, the Galatians were once Pauline. In fact, they were saved under the only gospel that could save these Gentiles, his gospel. But the Judaizers came up there and said, oh yeah, but you have to be saved now and baptized, saved and circumcised, saved and keep the law of Moses if you're going to do that. The Apostle Paul said, wait a minute, you're removed from me, metatithemi. You've changed your theological position. You've gone from the gospel that I preached and from the man that you heard the message from to another person and another gospel. So that's why he says the word another here, in Greek, is two separate words. The first is another gospel of a different kind. The category is different. And of course, the Judaizers had the kingdom message blended with the grace message. And then some of the Judaizers weren't even saved. They were requiring these grace believers to keep the law of Moses and so forth. Now, let's note something else here. He says in verse number 7, which is not another gospel. Now, the word here means not another gospel of the same kind. Meaning it's a different caliber. Oh yes, they claim it's a message of good news, religion, cleaning up your life. You'll be better for attending church and so forth. But it's not the same kind of good news. Only Paul's gospel saves. Therefore, though they claimed it as a gospel, it didn't save the soul. And so Paul uses these two terms. Another gospel of a different kind, but it's another gospel of the same kind. Well, it's different in category and it's different in caliber. It's removed from my gospel, and it's a gospel that cannot save. So he goes on here to say, and here's the twofold curse. And if we have politicians who by law and decree force citizens to embrace another gospel or another God or another apostle. No, though we or an angel from heaven preach any other gospel unto you than that which we have preached, let him be accursed. As we said before, so say I now again. Don't mean to be redundant, says Paul, but I'm driving the point home. If any man preach any other gospel unto you than that ye have received, of me in other words, let him be accursed. Now, you'll note, back up in verse number 7, he says that these people were not only being removed from Paul, but they, last part of the verse, were perverting the gospel of Christ. Now, the word pervert here means to change its appearance, its nature, or its character, so that Jesus Christ might be named. But if he is not named in conjunction with Paul's message, and that's what we preach, it is the preaching of Jesus Christ after the revelation of the mystery given to Paul. That's the gospel of the grace of God. So, in actuality, our politicians could bring us under the curse, the twofold curse, in requiring people to embrace a gospel different than Paul's gospel. All right. Now, here's what we want to do. I want to really drive home another point to you. And we're going to take the next 4 diagrams and show there is only one theocracy that God has ever intended for all of history. There is only one covenant nation, and therefore there is only one nation that is going to ultimately be Christian. But they're going to be Christian not in the Gentile sense of today. They're going to be Christian in that they claim Christ as Messiah King. That nation is not America. That nation is Israel. So you'll follow with me as we turn back to Exodus chapter 24. Exodus chapter 24. Now, every single portion of Scripture that I read pertains to Israel. And they all end with the words of the covenant. All of them. And you can search the Scriptures all you want to, but you will never find God making a covenant either before or after Israel. And it's only with Israel. Israel's the covenant nation. Therefore, there's only one nation that can truly be a theocracy. All other Gentile nations can become associated with that theocracy and will in the kingdom, but it doesn't change the nature of Israel as the nation that has God as the leader, God's Son on the throne, a temple service, a spiritual service, the law, the moral service, and that sort of thing. The priesthood and all of that, the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. Only Israel. Gentiles participate either by associating with the covenant, or Gentiles can get saved by grace, as they are now. But they cannot make their nation a theocracy. Now, we're in Exodus chapter 24. Let's look at verse number 8. Here's where he came down from the mount, and they ratified the old covenant. And by the way, the old covenant starts in Exodus chapter 20 and continues on through Acts chapter 8. And then it doesn't start again until Hebrews and goes all the way to Revelation. That's the old covenant, and then it becomes the process of changing toward the kingdom and the new covenant. So Moses took the blood and sprinkled it, note, on the people. When in history were any of the leaders or the people of the United States of America sprinkled with the blood of the covenant? Why and why did they have to be? Because that put the burden, the onus, the monkey on their back, you see. That put the responsibility on them. God said, this is what I want them to do, and all the people responded. All that the Lord has said unto us, we will do. And Moses said, you know what you're talking about? Yes, we'll do it. And they entered into a covenant. So he killed the lamb, he put the blood in a basin, and he took it and he began to sprinkle it on the people. Why? Because God was ratifying a covenant with a covenant people, Israel. This blood is on me, and it shows redemption, shows ownership, and so forth. So he said, behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord hath made with you concerning these words. There was not, except for some of the mixed multitude, there was not a Gentile around. And it was with the tribes of Israel, the leaders of Israel, and the founder of the nation, Moses, that this was made. And therefore to claim that America somehow as a covenant nation is an atrocity, is a perversion of the Scriptures. We are not. Okay, let's go to Deuteronomy 31 and move from the blood of the covenant to the Ark of the Covenant. Deuteronomy 31 and verse number 24. Now, we can go to the Smithsonian. We can go to all of the archives, Library of Congress. We can go to any of those types of museums in Washington, D.C. or any place else in the United States of America. And I guarantee you, unless Indiana Jones Part 1 was true, the Ark of the Covenant is not located in the United States of America. And I guarantee you that there is nothing about this Ark that has anything to do with America. But it has everything to do with the nation of Israel. They were given a piece of furniture wherein God would, number one, come down and sit on the mercy seat, and number two, have blood sprinkled on the mercy seat, and he would meet with Israel, and he would direct them from that place in the tabernacle. The United States of America has no piece of furniture like that. It eventually found its way into the temple, and is to be a permanent thing until it's replaced in the kingdom. Verse 24. And it came to pass, when Moses had made an end of writing the words of this law in a book until they were finished, Moses commanded the Levites, which bear the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, saying, take this book of the law and put it in the side of the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, that it might be a witness against thee. So Moses wrote words there. As a matter of fact, manna was in here, and Aaron's rod that budded was in here, and so forth. And Israel was to carry the Ark of the Covenant from where they built it there beneath Sinai to the Promised Land, and it was to stay there and be part of the furnishings of the temple. But we don't have an ark. Inside of that ark is the promise of God to Israel, the covenant relationship. That ark represents God being a God to the nation of Israel, speaking to Israel. That ark represented the spiritual service, being in the Holy of Holies and having the priest come from the congregation into the Holy of Holies, have God speak to him, and then go out to the people. But it's all Israeli. It has nothing whatsoever to do with us. We don't, this may look like the Ark of the Covenant up here. It's probably big or bigger than the Ark. Might be his head. No, the Ark was gold, but overlaid with gold. But it is not the Ark of the Covenant. There is nothing in here of any value except as it pertains to this ministry. But this Ark guaranteed Israel the presence and power of God. And that makes it extremely valuable. Okay, let's go back to Exodus 24 again. I should have put these in better order, but I didn't. So you'll have to suffer through it with me. 24. And verse number 3. Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord, all the judgments, and all the people answered, All the words which the Lord hath said we will do. Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up early in the morning and built an altar on the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, it's strange. We might have states and counties. We don't have tribes. And we don't have men who are related to us that are designated as our leaders over a parcel of land. But verse number 7. And Moses took the book of the covenant, read it in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said we will do. And Moses then ended up sprinkling the people and the book with regard to the blood. It was sealed with the blood. It was secured with the blood. It was guaranteed with the blood. It was ratified by the blood. And so all of this, it makes no sense at all unless there is only one theocracy in the world and in history, and that is the nation of Israel. All right, let's go to the second thing. Chapter 34 of Exodus. And verse number 28. Now, as we have it in our illustration here, we're going to look at the words of the covenant. It says, and Moses was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. Verse number 27, let's back up. Write these words, for after the tenor of these words I have made a covenant with thee and with Israel. So he was there 40 days and 40 nights, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. Now, what's the point here? Point number 1 is you'll note the language that I have specified here. The language is Hebrew. Do you know that the original language, this is my estimation, that the world from Adam to Babylon had one language. And then from that point, because God chose one line and one man with his family, he gave him that language. That language was Hebrew. And that the Jews are going to be scattered throughout the world, but they're going to be brought back to Israel. And you know what language they're going to have to learn? The language is going to be Hebrew. The entire Old Testament was written in Hebrew. But more importantly, the words of the covenant were in Hebrew. There wasn't any Gentile could read these words. It was the Hebrew language. You had to know Hebrew. And these are the words of the covenant that God has given to the nation of Israel. And note particularly, as you see all the little signs up, put the 10 commandments here and the 10 commandments there. The words of the covenant involve the 10 commandments for Israel. Now this is extremely important because of another graph that we're going to see. The first 5 of the 10 commandments were never given to Gentiles politically or nationally. Now we'll see this. I'm just whetting your appetite. This is things to come. The first 5 were never given. Well, you say the 5th one is the parents, to honor the parents. Yeah, and doesn't Paul say about that? Yes, he does. But who does he tell that to? Believers. The last 5 of the 10 commandments he mentions with regard to nations. But even then, they are not mandatory. They are not enforced. I believe the number 6 says, thou shalt not commit adultery. If it's under Israel's law, what do you do if you commit adultery? What do you get if you commit adultery and are caught? You're killed. You suppose that with all the raunchy parties going on and all the drunkenness and so forth that's going on or in association with the Super Bowl, do you suppose there'll be a lot of those shenanigans going on tonight? And do you suppose that anybody will be taken out in the street and stoned for it? They will not. And yet, that's part of being a covenant nation. Here we are. The words of the covenant. All right, let's go back to the book of Genesis, chapter 17. Genesis chapter 17. The token of the covenant. And I thought that this would be the most discreet and tasteful way of showing this, because it is difficult. But the circle is what it's meant to be. The circle is the sign of the covenant. And it's the sign of the covenant around the male sex organ, because it was Abraham and his seed to whom the covenant was given. And there are no Gentiles, as like I said this morning, aside from the surgical or the medical or the antiseptic procedure performed on males. It is not performed the 8th day in association with a religious rite. And yet, we find this as mandatory regarding the covenant. Let's go Genesis 17, verse 10. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep between me and you and your seed. Every man-child shall be circumcised. Ye shall circumcise the flesh of his foreskin, and it means to go around it. That's what circumcision is. And it's the sign of the covenant because God is the circle God. And that circle means that he is, as the ages roll, as it were, God is faithful to his word. And that's what this sign is all about. He that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your generations. He that is born in your house, he that is bought with money, the stranger that is not of your seed. Gentiles could be associated, but they still had to have the covenant. As a matter of fact, when we get to the Passover, it says that Gentiles can eat it, but not until they first have been circumcised, and then their house falls under household salvation with that. So it's the token of the covenant. Okay, let's go from here to Deuteronomy 9. Deuteronomy chapter 9. And verse number 9. When I was gone up into the mount to receive the tables of stone, even the tables of the covenant, which the Lord made with you, when I abode them out 40 days, and so forth. And the Lord delivered unto me 2 tables of stone, written with the finger of God. And on them was written according to all the words which the Lord spake unto you in the mount. The 2 tables of stone, verse number 11, which are the tables of the covenant. So we use the expression, well, it's not written in stone. Well, it's not etched in granite. God's covenant with the nation of Israel was. And not only that, he did the writing himself of these. That's what it says here. And even more importantly, come to Hebrews 9. Hebrews chapter 9. And verse number 4. Talk about the Ark of the Covenant. It says, in the holiest of all, it had the ark, which, or rather, you had the holy place and then the holy of holies. The holy place had the golden censer. Then the ark of the covenant was in the holy of holies. It had the golden pot that had manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and now note what else is in there. The tables of the covenant. So the book that Moses wrote, they would have put that in there, and it also said that these particular tables of the covenant were contained. And it's because God wanted a safe place to keep all of these documentations regarding this covenant. It is just unmistakable. No other nation can be a covenant nation. No other nation can be a Christian nation. It is impossible for that to happen because no other nation has all of these things that point toward God's relationship with an individual nation. All right, let's look at a few more things here. Go back to the book of Ezekiel. chapter 20. Ezekiel chapter 20. And we'll start with verse number 33. Now, we all know that Israel's scattered. But God's going to regather them because he's going to remember his what? Covenant. And even though he severed relations with them, he is going to bring them back into what he calls the bond of the covenant. Verse 33, as I live, saith the Lord, surely with a mighty hand, with a stretched out arm, and with fury poured out, will I rule over you. I'm going to do it. And I'll bring you out from the people and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered with a mighty hand. Verse number 35, and I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there I'll plead with you face to face. As I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness, I'm going to do the same with you. Verse 36. And I'll cause you to pass under the rod, and I'll bring you into the bond of the covenant. I promised it, your fathers promised it, and it says that in Deuteronomy that this covenant that we're making with God today, we've made it not only with you who stand here, but with all future generations of Jews. They're bound by the covenant, but more importantly, God is bound by the covenant. And that's why we have here the perfect graphic and illustration. It's got the iron ball with the chain to an ink pen. And that pen represents the word of God that he gave to Israel. And that God himself, without being a liar, God himself must honor his word to make that nation what it is. And that's what he's saying. I've got a bond, you've got a bond, and we're going to do it. I will purge out from among you the rebels, them that transgress, and I will bring them forth out of the country and into the land, last part, and you'll know that I am the Lord. All right, so let's go to Malachi. Now this is the last of the minor prophets. Go to Matthew and turn left, and you're there. Malachi chapter 3. Now the picture we have in the graphic is that of the Lord Jesus Christ. Because he's the messenger of the covenant. The old and the new covenants actually are going to be blended. Now what do I mean by that? God only took away the conditionality of the old covenant when he brought in the new, and he took away the blood dynamics and so forth. The blood of bulls and goats, which couldn't do it, in favor of the blood once and for all shed, which could do it forever. But the conditionality is, if ye will, I will. Old covenant. Jesus Christ, the messenger of the covenant, is going to say, look, this is my blood of the new covenant, and God is going to enable you to fulfill both covenants. He's going to cause you to keep the law. So he's the messenger of the covenant fulfillment, and the like. And so verse 1 in Malachi 3. Behold, I will send my messenger. He shall prepare the way before me, and the Lord whom ye seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in. Behold, he's going to come, saith the Lord. That, of course, is a reference to the Lord Jesus Christ. He fulfilled the old covenant perfectly. He shed the blood of the new covenant. He removed the ineffectiveness of the old in favor of the new. And Israel is going to see that blend coming in the kingdom. But it was announced by the King of the Jews to his people that they have a covenant that God's going to fulfill. And he's that messenger. The fact that he was here, he dealt with the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he didn't go to the Gentiles, is indicative of the fact that God is interested in that nation being a theocracy. Okay, two more things. Let's go to Galatians first. Book of Galatians, chapter 3. Now, when I first came into the grace theology and so forth, We're in Galatians chapter 3. One of the things that convinced me was some of the writings of the old-timers that would talk about these Reformed theologians wanting the promises of the Jews to be given to them, but they never mentioned any of the curses. And Wayne Webb wrote a song for the life of me, I cannot remember it, but it's a little ditty that has to do with the Gentiles wanting all the blessings of Israel. But when it came to the curses, they seemed to forget those things, and that it's all part of the package that God gave with regard to the covenant. Keep the covenant, I'll bless you. Don't keep the covenant, I'll curse you. And let me tell you, there's no Gentile that have been keeping the covenant in this dispensation in its purity. Now, here's what happens. Verse number 10. And Paul's reminding these Gentiles and Judaizers that for as many as are of the works of the law, Galatians 3:10, are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone that continueth not in all things that are written in the book of the law, the book of the covenant, to do them. Now, if we're going to go back under the law, guess what? There are all sorts of things that will bring curses on you. Did you have any pork products this week? Any ribs, any bacon? Any ham, pork chops? Did you have any fiddlers, any catfish, and so forth? All of them, and yet you didn't have your ceremonial baptism and washing before you came to church. Now, that brings a curse. Now, that's just one of the milder things. There are many, many curses that are mentioned. Let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 29. Deuteronomy chapter 29. Now you talk about curses. We got curses. Give you a good deal. We'll discount the curses. You want it, we got it. We got so many that are running over, the Jews could say. Let's see. Tell you what we'll do here. Let's start with verse number 9. It's a little bit lengthy portion here, but we'll try to skip over some of these things. Verse number 9, Deuteronomy 29. Keep therefore the words of the covenant and do them, that ye might prosper. You stand this day, all of you, before the Lord your God. And it mentions who it is. The reason, verse 12, that you should enter into the covenant with the Lord your God and into his oath that he makes with you this day, that he might establish thee as a people unto himself, and that he may be unto thee a God. Now mind you, that's what the covenant is really all about. That a nation would have a God. And the United States of America could never do that. We're a democracy. We go on consensus. We go on majority opinion. And so therefore, which God do you think that we'd have if we were all going to vote? Would it be the God of the Bible? Would it be the God that Paul presents? I tell you, it would not. But I guarantee you that under the concept of a covenant and a theocracy with Israel, that all of this is about, I will be your one and only God, and you will be my one and only people. So, note verse 14. Neither with you only do I make this covenant and oath, but with him that standeth here with us this day before the Lord, and also with him that is not here with us this day. So it is perpetuated through the generations. You're the progenitors, and therefore you're ratifying it, and on we go until the kingdom's established. And even then, the covenant tenets still stand for you. Now, let's verse number 17 talks about idols and so forth. And verse 19, it's going to come to pass then that there might be some that hear the words of this curse, that he bless himself in his heart, saying, I'll have peace, though I walk in the imagination of my heart. The Lord will not spare him. We're getting into these curses. You can't have, if you are a covenant people, you can't have another God. And if God is your governor, as it were, your king, he's going to find out that you've got another God, and he's going to kick you out. When is the last time we have deported anybody, or killed anybody, or scattered anybody to the four corners of the earth because they have chosen another God than the God of the Bible? But in a theocracy, you can do that. Let's look. I will not spare him. Then the anger of the Lord and his jealousy shall smoke against that man, and all the curses that are written in this book shall lie upon him. Now, shall I say, this is bad. We're in a very dire situation when all the curses of the book of the law are written, or rather given over to someone. And the Lord shall blot out his name from up under heaven. The Lord shall separate him unto evil out of all the tribes, according to all the curses of the covenant that are written in the book of the law. Fine, let's be a Christian nation, but let's take the whole package. And you break the law, all the curses, and then we ostracize you. Put you on a raft and put you out in the middle of the ocean and call for Jaws to come and do his bidding. That's what this is all about. Now there's one more thing that I want you to see just before our time runs out, and we'll pick up here the next time with some more of these curses. But come with me to Acts chapter 3. Acts chapter 3. Now, note verse number 12. This is in association with the day of Pentecost, where Jews out of every nation under heaven were assembled for one of the three mandatory feast days. He said, ye men of Israel. Verse 13, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of our fathers, has glorified his Son. And it goes on down to talk to the Jews then present about their circumstances, what they did with Christ, and so forth. But note what he calls them in verse number 25. Ye are the children of the prophets, and ye are the children of the covenant, which God made with our fathers, saying to Abraham, and in thy seed shall all the kindreds of the earth be blessed. Now, you can search, you can fuss and fume, you can get mad, you can snort and storm, and you can have a royal hissy, but it's not going to matter. You will never be a child of the covenant. Your genetics are not right, your dispensation is not right, your geography is not right, your governing system is not right, your leadership is not right for you to ever be a child of the covenant. You have to be a Jew in Israel, in Jerusalem, related to Abraham, and have everything that is associated with the covenants of Israel pertain to you, which you do not have. Paul says that we were Gentiles that were alienated from the commonwealth of Israel, without God and without hope in the world, until Jesus Christ appeared to Saul of Tarsus and gave him the message for today.